The Spring Hill Fire Department officially opened its new 11,000 square foot, $6 million fire station on Miners Memorial Drive at a ceremony on Saturday. And here to talk with us about that is the Mayor of Cumberland, Rod Gilroy. And Mr. Mayor, that was a big day in Spring Hill, and you got to cut the ribbon along with the Chief Matthew Ward.
Yes, absolutely. It was a great day. A lot of people out, very proud moment. One of the happiest and most pleasing things I've been able to do since being elected last October. Had a fantastic opening, and the people of Spring Hill came out in droves to see their new fire hall.
You know, it's interesting you say that because, and in the interest of full disclosure here, of course, I have been a firefighter for about a dozen years or so, just retired at the end of 2024, but was very much involved in both the news media side and the firefighter side over the last few years. And, you know, a lot of the firefighters were really doubtful of the commitment being made by the county. You've said that supporting the fire service is a priority of council. And that goes back to the term of Mayor Murray Scott, of course. I know that as a firefighter that a lot of firefighters back then thought that was just political rhetoric. And but I think that you've won them over with your effort. I really do. They were really suspect of you guys, but this new hall and the purchase of rather expensive fire trucks and equipment, I think you've won them over. But did you fully appreciate the size of this challenge?
Listen, we looked at it when we got the report back on the Gilroy report and did a quick estimation, and then a longer dive into it as to where we would have to be. And this year we committed a large amount of budget money, including setting aside $500,000 in reserve for future needs and from a capital point of view, whether it's for more apparatus or newer apparatus and new buildings and so on. And we're on the path, and this was just another step along the way. And here it is Monday morning. We cut the ribbon on Saturday, and I'm on my way to a meeting to discuss the next steps. For the fire service and what else we can take a look at. So, interestingly enough,
well, you're talking about millions every year, in fact, and I think that's why the firefighters back then were really suspect and thought, you guys don't know what it is you're getting yourself in for by suggesting you want to pay for the fire service, and they just kind of turned a blind eye and said it's never going to happen. But it is happening, and your commitment was real. I guess, the really jaundiced firefighters out there would be saying, what happens when you guys retire or another council comes on board that doesn't have the same commitment?
I don't think there's any danger of that happening. We've got a fire service and a group of volunteers, over 300 of them, that are very committed and second to none. I will say that. I've been saying it for a long time. And it's, they do their part. It's up to us to do our part. And Saturday morning, the other thing I would like to point out too, Bill, is when we were touring the new facility on Saturday, that one comes complete with a full gymnasium and, so to speak, with all kinds of lifting equipment and all of that, and the things that are very specific to the fire service, like jump boxes. And I got a fantastic tour of that. And one of the things that I'd never seen before was the elliptical ladder climber, which was a very interesting thing to have a look at. And all of that money came from the fire to do that. Came for that equipment. Came from the firefighters' 50/50 draw. So that plays a big part in our fire halls across the county too, in enabling things like this to be outfitted by them.
Well, you make the point about a 50/50 draw, and since the the volunteer fire service began, to a large extent, they've been doing all the heavy lifting in terms of fundraising on their own, and they've become fairly accustomed to coming up with creative ways to get people to contribute to the fire service. And people have been extremely generous over the years. Then the councils from way back when decided they would help by allowing there to be an area rate on the tax rate that would be provided to the fire service. But, to put it into perspective, one of the largest expenditures you have and every municipality has is police protection. And the reason for that, of course, is it might be just one contract for you with the RCMP headquarters, but in fact, you're paying for all of those people, all of those police officers, the equipment, the buildings, and so on. In the case of the fire service, you're paying for the equipment and the buildings. You're not yet paying for the firefighters because they remain volunteers. And if you put it into that perspective and realize if you had to pay them a wage, wow.
Yes, and that's a big part of this whole thing because with having a county with so many departments that are so in some remote rural areas and all of that, it'd be a virtual nightmare to try and organize full-time paid firefighters in all of those stations, or at least in the bulk of them, and that type of thing. We watch the budget with in the HRM and what's going on there, and every year there's a big argument among council about we need another X amount of millions to do this and whatever. And you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not so sure that if you do it that way, that you have any room left. It sure would make it an awfully big challenge to be able to buy the equipment and build the fire halls and support that side of the service if a large part of your budget was going to personnel. So it's we're really at this point in time thankful that all of the firefighters are volunteers in the county of Cumberland. And the other thing I want to point out too, Bill, is that it's interesting that when the fire service starts to see support from the municipalities like they are seeing now, that you see an announcement like Amherst just made to build that large training facility right here in the town of Amherst. And last week when we were meeting at our usual get together with the mayors and CAOs and whatever, Mayor Small very quickly pointed out that all of our firefighting crews would be more than welcome to be able to use this facility once it's built, and that means an awful lot to us too.
Well, really, there's no greater or stronger brotherhood, sisterhood, I don't think, than you'll find anywhere than in the fire service. And the inter-county, inter-town, inter-everything cooperation is paramount, to say the least. And part of what you've been doing in modernizing, if you will, the fire service in Cumberland is that you adopted what you call a hub system. And that has Trumanville, Pugwash, Spring Hill, and Parsboro providing central hub services to the other 12 fire departments across the county. And I'm wondering, there was suspect about that too. Are you finding broad acceptance to the idea? And is it yet paying any dividends?
Oh, I think it's paying dividends already, and we're not getting any, the fire service has wholeheartedly endorsed this plan of action. And I think, it means that we now have some centralized stuff going on. We have a centralized spot to train. It improves the coordination of the hub departments in their one-on-one dealings with one another and as a working group. So I think it's been a win-win for everybody. I really do.
Oh, there's no question about that. And, they certainly support the concept. Again, going back 5, 6 years, 7 years maybe, they were doubtful that you would actually deliver the service. But you are, and you have been meeting their expectations as we go. So I think you've won them over, and that they do believe now, and that's great. And I recognize certainly that it's more modern, it's more streamlined, it has better backup. You mentioned training. Those 4 hub stations will provide more localized training. The possibility to share with Amherst is just an add-on because, in fact, some of the facilities you're setting up in the hubs could very easily provide training services for a wide range of firefighting services across northern Nova Scotia, for example. Is it? And this is my perception. I don't know, but is it fair to suggest that Cumberland is once again leading the province in terms of these kinds of innovations?
I believe we are, and it's a spot where we'd like to stay. One thing we have realized is that you can't take a year or two off of, buying apparatus and you every once in a while you get, the former council's got the urge to move a budget, the fire budget over a little bit or slide it sideways in order to achieve something else. And then at the end of the day, if you take a year off and not support the fire service, for example, or not buy any new apparatus, all you're doing is making next year worse. So, you know what? It's better to budget for it, do it annually, and support it annually, and improve it annually, and then you get to where you want to be at the end of the day. And listen, we're not there yet. We're still years away from being where the end game is for us in this whole project. But we commit money to it every year going forward. We'll get there. I'm sure of it.
Oh, no question, and of course it isn't cheap. That's right. In your comments on Saturday, you mentioned the fact that a rescue truck, which is sometimes a really smaller but heavy duty, well equipped, do everything kind of vehicle, they run $250,000 and more. But then when you get into the big pumpers and the big action trucks in the fire service, of course, you begin at $1 million plus. And, when it comes time to replace them, as you know, most of our fire departments had trucks that were way past their life expectancy. And, just like the rest of us have to get an annual inspection on our cars for safety inspection, fire trucks and fire apparatus have a limited life expectancy based on insurance companies wanting to make sure that they're not backing an old fire truck that can't cut it anymore. So they look at trucks at a certain age and say, that's it. That's its limited life. It would look shiny, bright, and new and everything else. And you look at it and say, well, it still works. Well, in some cases, they don't. And most of the vehicles in the fleet were of that vintage. They were 10, 15, 20, and 25 years old, supposedly past their date. And now you're beginning, on an annual basis, you're beginning to replace those. It used to be that the county would step up about every 10 years with one. Now you're looking at doing one or more every year. And as you say, that's a big bill, bill.
For sure. We just replaced one of those units in Parisboro here, 2 weeks ago or thereabouts. And I know that I can't recall exactly which department it was, but we were having a discussion last year, and one of their rescue trucks was a 1989, I believe it was. And,
wow!
And you know what? You look at, like, for example, take that as an example, and you would say, okay, it's an 89, and it's in a department where there's, perhaps not a lot of calls, but you're going to have one occasionally where you're going to need that piece of equipment. So when we're looking at lately, we've been buying some used vehicles the last couple of years as a way to sort of feather the money out and still improve the service, right? But if you take, we buy a used one, say a 2010 or whatever, and you put it in a department where there's a very low volume of calls, you don't rack up a lot of miles on them, so they can be kept in service for quite a lengthy period of time. But even a 2010 is a huge improvement for one of the rural fire departments over a 1989 model, right?
Yeah, no question. Now, on another issue relative to the new fire hall in Spring Hill, and don't get me wrong, there's no big raging controversy in the town, but there are some people with a bit of a misconception about the new fire hall, and that is that they got bumped out of their facility in order to pave the way for a residence for the community college. And that, of course, as you probably well know, is not true. It was all about the same thing. The college is looking for housing. The province was looking for providing some kind of residential facility. It needed to be within walking distance of the college. And there sat the old fire hall right next door. it made perfect sense that it be there. And the fire department was looking for a new facility that was already in the planning. And so as a consequence, they kind of speeded things up, or maybe they didn't, correct me if I'm wrong. They kind of speeded things up to get the fire hall under construction to open up the possibility of the old fire hall becoming the site for the residents. Now, some people think you pushed them out. I know you didn't, but just need to reaffirm that. How did the thinking go on that swap over situation?
Well, there was a couple of moving parts in that. There was a couple of issues with the old fire department building, a major electrical issue that was price tagged out at a big number to try and fix it, and no guarantees that you could fix it. And it was an aging building that 50 some years old, or right around the 50-year mark.
Kind of like you.
And the other thing yes, exactly. And then, but you know what, though? At the end of the day, the added bonus of this, because obviously part of it, we're moving to the new hub model, and we need, and Spring Hill is a hub station, and this made, that started to get into the hopper, and Murray Scott and I had several conversations. Murray, I don't want to throw money. Bad money after good on the old building. If we can go the other way, the other thing we did here, the inadvertent thing that became part of the plan, and really was a very important piece of framework around this whole thing, how it all went down, is that the new NSCC building that will be on the former fire hall site in Spring Hill. That's like taking a wrench and tightening the lock on the NSCC staying in Spring Hill. And was so hugely important to the County of Cumberland to keep both of our campuses and keep them viable and keep them here. And you know what? That in my mind solidifies the commitment to Cumberland County for the NFCC. And hopefully that's how it all turns out.
Wow, you've opened up a new conversation there. It never occurred to me there might have been some doubt about the NSCC leaving Spring Hill. Never occurred to me, and perhaps it was never part of the public conversation, but you're absolutely right. The continued development of the facility and the facilities around it, you're right, it's going to kind of cement it to be there maybe for a very, very long time. And we've talked so many times about NSCC and utilizing the new energy source underground and in the warm water that exists from the former mines, and on and on and on. Spring Hill, I've been saying for a while, is poised for a major, major leap forward. And things have been happening in that former town, in that community over the last few years. Major infrastructure work was done. It's getting the new fire hall, a new residence building, new housing construction. There's some things going on in the county, and particularly in Spring Hill.
Yes, absolutely. One of the other items that we've been on very much so, been on the committee and had a number of meetings in the last few months with regards to the geothermal greenhouse thing that's going on in Spring Hill that we're trying to get off the ground down there. And I know Minister Rushton has been at almost all of the meetings, had lots of input and taken lots of stuff back to the government. And we're at the stage that we finished a meeting 2 weeks ago where we now have a draft idea and a draft plan, and how we're in the process of looking for partners in the community to help make that a reality. And we now, people have been talking about it since 1983. We've been drilling test holes in Spring Hill everywhere. We've been, all kinds of work going on, but that's all it ever got was talk. We talked about it, we summed it up, we did this, we did that, and I have committed and completely committed because I think it's an absolutely fabulous resource, a fabulous idea, and we've been talking to the feds, the Green Energy Fund, we've been talking to all kinds of people, and I really want to get this greenhouse project going in Spring Hill, and I think it's the next step for Spring Hill.